Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World episode 192. I'm your host John. Don't forget to check out my daily email about blockchain gaming. You can find that at gamestx.substack.com. In today's episode, I'm talking to Daryl Xu, who is the CEO at MPC Labs. MPC Labs is the company behind the B3 blockchain. So that just launched its token last week. It's been pretty successful so far. Thanks to Daryl for finding the time to talk to me in a very busy week. And really this podcast is an introduction into what's going on with B3. So we have the origin story, how it came out of the Base blockchain, Coinbase's L2, and how the sort of origination came really with Daryl talking to blockchain games companies about what they needed in a blockchain and deciding that an L3 that was very, very cheap and very fast was going to be the way to go. So that's what's happened. They've announced a few partners, including InfiniGods and Parallel. One of the key things actually we do talk about is the business sort of model around B3, or one of the business models. And that's very much around sort of aligning sort of the growth of the ecosystem between games. So if a player comes in on one game and then goes to play in another game, any transactions that they do in the second game, 30% of those get passed back to the first game. So there's an idea, which we talk about quite a bit, about growing the pie rather than just fighting over the size of your individual slice, which I think is quite important for the sector at the moment. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Every week we're putting out new episodes with people who are building out some really interesting new projects. So don't miss out, do subscribe, but on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Very pleased I've got Daryl, who is the CEO of B3. Actually, technically, you're the CEO of MPC Labs, but I guess we're going to talk about B3, the new blockchain. So I guess we can I think two things get combined. How's it going? I think you've been pretty busy over the last couple of days.
Oh yeah. We went live with the B3 token, I think just 2 days ago, and so. Yeah, hot off the
You've
press.
lost track of days now. It's a blur.
I've lost track of days. Yeah, I don't know if it's Monday, Tuesday. I don't know what day it is. I don't think the team knows. I don't think the team has slept half the week. But we are rocking and rolling. We're excited, and I'm super honored and glad to be on.
Good, excellent. Well, I'm very pleased you found time to come on. So plenty to talk about. I just sort of wonder. You say it's sort of a crazy time, but to actually launch a token, and actually as much as you have control over this, you've launched a token really well. So I think it's up like 200% or something. So I mean, it just is clearly just like sort of insane pressure, because I guess there's lots of things, lots of demands on your time, lots of sort of technical things. I guess you test as much as you can, but until you go live, you're not live. And what's that just been like, as being sort of the man who everyone, if it's a question, I guess everyone points at you or wants your opinion.
Yeah, and I think I first want to shout out like the team that we've been working on the launch for months now, and to see it finally come to life and come to the market and be well received, I think is a testament to the team's hard work, and also the vision that we have for the ecosystem, right? If we take a quick step back, B3, right, we're not just an application, we're not just one chain. Actually, we're building this ecosystem of chains where folks like InfiniGods and Parallel and others that we'll be announcing pretty shortly here can join in, build their own game chain, which is what we call it, and build this ecosystem again of essentially on-chain gaming publishers is how we think about it. But yeah, I think the first step and the first big milestone in that journey is launching that currency of this ecosystem, right? And so shout out to the team for sure, but also shout out to all of the partners, including the Player One Foundation, which is the foundation behind the B3 token, who we work very, very closely with to make this launch a success. I think, happy to talk more about it. It is fresh on our minds, obviously, and we're excited about the road ahead.
Cool. Okay, so let's rewind time. So you say you've been working on this for months, but I think as a project, I mean, you have been working on that for for years. But in terms of like the public face, it seems to be fairly sort of recent. So maybe like 6-7 months that you guys sort of came out. Maybe I'm wrong. My time's dilated. But in terms of what was the sort of spark? Because you mentioned you working at Coinbase Base blockchain. So in a sense, people are launching games on Base. It's not like we it's not like the world is crying out for more block space. Plenty of block space. The problem is filling up block space. So how do you end up with the sort of slightly mad idea of let's launch another blockchain for games?
Yeah, and not just one blockchain, right? Let's launch many, many more blockchains.
Yeah.
I think you hit on such an important point there, where we are very young and in our infancy in terms of the project and ecosystem history. We launched mainnet in August, and we're layer 3 on Base. Just a little bit of context for your audience that may not be aware. But I do want to take us a step back. Like, I've been in crypto since 2015. And had the fortunate opportunity to work on a ton of amazing things. I think the one that's most relevant to what we're building today is Base. And so a lot of our team is ex-Coinbase and ex-Base. Myself and one of my co-founders and the head of our foundation, we were on the original team that brought Base to market. And I was actually looking after gaming and infrastructure specifically. And it was at that point in time where Base really started to take off, gain mindshare, liquidity. And we had these super incredible, very, very talented game builders like Parallel, for example, and Kalos, right? Come to us and say, hey, look, I want to deploy more of my titles, like Colony, for example, in your ecosystem on your chain. When we scoped it out, though, we quickly found two issues. Number one, because Base is so popular, it's like a blessing and a curse, right? Because Base is so popular, transactions are freaking expensive, right? And I know the Base team is working hard on it, but when you have to share block space with high value DeFi transactions, it's really, really hard for a gaming studio when they want to make the transactions as cheap as possible, right? So there's like a misalignment of incentives there. And so one, the challenge was Base as a blockchain wasn't really configured for gaming specifically and was too expensive. And the second, I think, John, you'll resonate with this too, just from, your decades of gaming experience, right? I think to bring a game to market is one of the most challenging things you can probably do from like a consumer product launch perspective, right? And, you think of it a lot like movies too, with these like AAA games, high production budgets, right? Live ops that you have to run post-launch. And these games come to the ecosystem needing that kind of support, right? And at the time, Base was not necessarily positioned to provide what I call publisher-like support, right? And that's mainly because they're, an ecosystem for everyone, right? And so, of course, it's impossible for them to do so. And so when I found those challenges and, talked to game builders like Parallel, like my co-founder and I, we put our heads together and say, hey, look, there is this new framework that's developing pretty quickly by gigabrains in the space, not myself, but other folks that are way more talented than myself. This layer 3 ecosystem, if you build it on top of Base, actually, you'll inherit a ton of cost benefits, right? A ton of throughput benefits. And if we are able to launch then in layer 3 ecosystem, we can brand it and build it as gaming first, right? And so not only do we have the technology in the chain, we'll be building this publisher ecosystem, right? Where we'll have financial support at the ready, marketing support at the ready through, publisher-like systems and capabilities. And then also, as we start to grow and build our ecosystem, we'll have our own native distribution as well. And all of that basically is, right, what a publisher offers. So that's really the kind of complete origin story, right? I went on a bit of a tangent there, but that started like a year ago. And then, we had a conversation with the Coinbase team. We said, hey, look, we really want to build this and scale gaming on Base. We did that, almost a year ago to this date. And then we, raised capital along the way with amazing partners like Pantera, Makers, Hash, and Coinbase Ventures, and many others. And then in August of last year, we actually launched like the very first mainnet. So yeah, we're definitely young and we're early, but we also think that's an opportunity for the ecosystem to join us because it's still day one.
So I sort of refine my sort of point that, but my question there is, I guess, you're coming to this and saying this is a sort of a a fresh sort of a performant blockchain. We've looked at some of the sort of problems of even running on something like Base as an L2, and I guess that's interesting. When you were saying that, I was sort of remembering back when people were running on Ethereum mainnet, and and it's sort of exactly the same sort of problems. And
Yeah, like CryptoKitties, right? CryptoKitties crashed,
exactly.
ETH mainnet back in the day. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's and I'm sure you'll say your blockchain's the best because everyone thinks their blockchain's the best. But there still is sort of quite a lot of different sort of L3s. I mean, definitely last year we saw a lot of sort of infrastructure plays, particularly around sort of gaming. So people doing their own game chains, or I'm not technical enough to know this, but various different sort of flavors of this. So how do you think you stand out? And I guess there's two different things happening here. One is to some degree developers are going, which chain do I go on? And that's a decision matrix everyone's sort of going through. But equally, that's sort of the size of the pie, the cake so far, and that gets chopped up certain ways. But I guess the main thing really is a chains like B3 going to be onboarding people, or is it that for games to onboard people? Because it's still the case that I don't think we've really seen very strong growth at all in sort of the number of people who are playing these games. We're just sort of shuffling the same 100,000, 200,000 people around from game to game, and they're sort of just like sort of farming tokens and stuff like that. So how do we actually make the 10x the pie? How can you be part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you hit on a ton of great points there. I want to talk about growing the pie first. So you are absolutely right. I said this on another spaces earlier today that like our vision, our North Star is to onboard half the world, right? Because half the world plays games, some sort of games. My mom, plays casual games, right? Yeah. My little nephew now, he's, just about to turn 10. He was playing Roblox earlier. Now he's playing Genshin Impact, right? Like, and these folks, right, we want to bring on-chain because we think on-chain delivers a better experience. I think the way to do that right now is to, one, provide better titles, of course, and better games, which, I'm actually very bullish on in terms of like, the talent density. I see it growing year on year. Like I've been in crypto since 2015, right? Last crypto cycle, I think we had a ton of amazing experiments. I've always been a fan of Axie, but I think this cycle, Axie has gotten better. And then also we have newer titles that have gotten better too. We just need to put those in front of the users. And I think second, the infrastructure, I know, some folks might think like infrastructure is boring, but I do think critically infrastructure needs to happen. And, tooling around the infrastructure needs to evolve as well. I'll give an analogy here. I think folks were very bearish on tokens in general. I think folks were very bearish on tokens for, I think better part of like, the last half decade, let's call it, right? Like, why does everything need a token? There's no possible way in the future that everything will have a token. I remember having this conversation many times. I was always of the opinion that, most, I think, applications and most, assets will have a token. Because if you don't, that's missing a little bit of the benefit of, blockchain technology and like financialization and injecting liquidity into this asset or application. So I think it's very clear now that we're going in the world where everything will be tokenized, right? And I actually think similarly, we're, at least from a chain perspective, right, every large application, whether it's general consumer or gaming, is going to have its own app chain, right? We're calling our, build a game chain. And I think right now we're in this point in time where the technology and the user experience around the chain hasn't really caught up yet. And so people are like, the hype is like too high, right? And we're at the peak of inflated expectations. And so we're not really there yet. But I think in the very near future, what we're trying to show with, the open gaming ecosystem and all these game chains that we're helping to power, right, is actually when you play a game, it's going to be running on its own blockchain. But as a gamer and as a user, you won't notice the difference, right? You won't need to bridge, right, from layer 1 to layer 2 to layer 3, pay for gas, pay for instant bridging. You won't need to switch networks in your wallet. You're just going to play the game and get rewards as a player, and that's the user experience. And then as a developer, right, there's a lot of benefits to running your own chain. I think the one that, at least to me resonates the most is the fact that you don't have to share block space with other folks on your chain, and you don't have to share fees or introduce additional costs for those fees and then later on pass them to your gamers and users. Because I think one of the biggest problems right now in what I call, big gaming, the traditional gaming space, is just like the broken business models, and that creates a lot of perverse incentives, I think, in the industry, where, like, again, all the money goes to, GTA 6 and 2K, 22, right? And these, large AAA titles, and like the novel, newer titles, like, we're just not seeing as many of those these days, if any, right? We see maybe once every blue moon. You see Black Myth, right? You see, Power World, like, you see just one every so often. And I think crypto is actually the way and the fundraising vehicle and the technology that can, like, lead to this resurgence of, like, fun gaming, nostalgic gaming experiences again.
Okay. A little bit dread to ask this question, but I'll ask it anyway, and we'll see how we get on. So, from a technical point of view, you're sort of saying everyone's going to have their own, application chain, what you're calling game chains. You're obviously you're a degree down from Base. You're rolling back to Base. Base rolls back to Ethereum. So without getting too technical, how does this infrastructure actually sort of work? How are these? If everyone's running all these, you have all these game chains running on, not running on B3. They're sort of connected to B3. What does that sort of mean from a a consensus blah blah point of view?
Yeah, great question. So I would say, just a very, very high level, right? Base is a layer 2 that settles onto Ethereum as a layer 1, right? One of the technical mechanisms that happens, right, is, every so often, Base will essentially batch transactions together and then settle them onto Ethereum. And then, I think Base has a different operation, but some layer 2s also take what's called data availability and also basically split, like, settlement and data availability, right? That leads to additional cost benefits. What we're doing is very similar, but instead of using Ethereum as the settlement layer, right, and instead of using something else as data availability, what we're doing is using Celestia for data availability and then using Base for settlement, right? And I think one of the key points when it comes to, the framework, this modular blockchain framework, is you're splitting up, right, like governance, you're splitting up consensus, right, you're splitting up settlement. And I think the key point here is we are big believers in the Base ecosystem. And so for us, execution happens on our chain, and that's fast and performant, right? But when you're thinking about a settlement layer, you need to find one that, is not going to be hacked, not going to be reorged, right? And so, because that's where transactions will have finality, and that's where they'll ultimately live, right? And so if that settlement layer gets hacked, that impacts your blockchain as well. And I have full confidence in the Coinbase team and the Base team and their decentralization roadmap as well to, further de-risk and diversify the infrastructure behind the network. I think in Coinbase's history, since Brian Armstrong founded the company with Fred Ursum, they haven't been hacked once, right? They've always been the safest, and that applies to the blockchain team as well, which has, like, literally a SEAL team of what we used to call protocol operations and BlockSec folks to, like, manage and, foresee any issues.
Okay. And in terms of one of the things about having sort of games running on the same blockchain is you sort of have some sort of correct term, but you have some sort of, obviously it's ecosystem sort of benefits and some sort of pooled benefits in terms of liquidity and that sort of stuff. So if everyone's running on their own chain, I mean, obviously that's great for sort of performance and not sharing block space and not sharing fees and all that sort of stuff. But do you lose some of the sort of composability or interoperability? We don't really see much interoperability yet, but maybe potentially we see that down the line. So do we lose any of those in a sort of a B3 style sort of technology, or can those be also sort of integrated?
That's such a good point. Yeah, because I think what we're doing in terms of building this network of chains, it's been done before, right? Yeah. It's been done with Avalanche, right? It's been done with Polygon. So Avalanche, I think, is, to their credit, the pioneers of this idea of having your own blockchain through subnets, right? And you see two massive titles in their ecosystem, Gonzilla, which I love Theo and team. They've been doing an incredible job. And then you have MapleStory Universe, right? And I think what I saw as one of the issues with the way that the chain ecosystem has been developing is it's fantastic that these two will have their own blockchains, but I could see very quickly here it actually leads to user fragmentation and
Yeah.
liquidity fragmentation, right? Because you have to jump back and forth between the different chains, and I think technically, and the interoperability tech will definitely be there because Avalanche, they're a fantastic team. Other people are working on interop solutions, but I think the challenge I saw was what is the economic incentive, right, for let's say a MapleStory universe and a Gonzilla to actually send users to each other, right? I actually think there's a disincentive for them to do that. Once you onboard, right, the user to your blockchain and your game, right, are you really going to open up that ecosystem and all the, CAC and all the money you poured in and then just let that user go to MapleStory and all the, titles that MapleStory is publishing? And the way we were trending, it felt very Web2 to me, where there is a lot of lock-in on users and Apple, right, and all these different app platforms and even launchers, right, they're very sensitive and very concerned about their users going elsewhere naturally, right, and so they don't really go out of their way, right, to enable cross-pollination, let's call it that, right, and so to me that defeated the whole purpose of blockchain, which is to be open and permissionless, right? So I felt like we needed to take a step back here, right? Chains for everyone makes sense. Interoperability from a technical perspective is going to happen. But what was missing, in my opinion, was one of the core features of blockchain, which was like getting everyone economically incentivized and aligned. And so one of the key features of our open gaming ecosystem is if, let's say, Parallel, who's launching Prime Chain, has a user that goes from Parallel Chain and buys an NFT on InfiniGods God Chain, or does a swap on InfiniGods God Chain, or does something that generates on-chain revenue and transaction, 30% of that user's on-chain revenue is going to go back to Parallel. And so for me, this is a nice way, and again, it borrows from Web2 affiliate models, where we are encouraging developers to send users to each other and still have a sustainable business model and business case to do so. One of the other examples of this would be, we have our own app in the ecosystem called basement.fun. You go there, it's like a mini clip type experience where you go there, you can pull up games and instantly play. There's, 2 million plus wallets on that, right? Okay. And so if a basement user goes and plays something on GodChain, right, we will also get, 30% of that user's revenue on GodChain. So we're very incentivized, right, to send our users and encourage them to try out different titles in the ecosystem, because ultimately, we all benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's sort of interesting that how strong sort of referral systems are for individual blockchains, but we haven't seen very much of this ecosystem thing where, as you say, it's sort of, obviously with any game and with any sort of business, there's a sort of, where do you draw the lines between cooperative and sort of competitive? There's a bit of both in there, but at a fundamental level, sort of part of the point of blockchain is to know who these people are, and people will churn out of your game. So if you're managing to monetize them, or even you can incentivize some of the big whales to go to another game and still get that. That's sort of stripping out the blockchain stuff. That just seems to be a better business model of users than we've currently seen. It's odd. I suppose these things are sort of quite hard technically, I suppose, to some degree, and from a alignment point of view, until someone's done that, it's very hard for businesses to sort of work out exactly. It's just not in their sort of comfort zone, maybe, of letting users go. They're so desperate to keep them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they're desperate right now because of a point you brought up earlier, right? We only have likely, 100,000 might even be a stretch, right? Like we don't have that many real gamers in the ecosystem today, right? We have a lot of folks, I mean, including myself, right, that are here as, if I take my work hat off, right, and my builder hat off, like here as like speculators, and there's a little bit of degen in me and gambling in me, right? And so sometimes, to play these applications or try out these games, right, like not really there to play the game, right? You're there for the financial reward. And so I think it goes back to right now, folks are not necessarily the mindset of sharing users because the pie is too small. But I
Yeah,
think if
yeah.
we don't have the referral incentive and like this general incentive system for folks that want to, send users to each other, what's going to happen very quickly is we're going to keep continuing to compete for the same small pie, right? And even as we onboard new users in, everyone's going to be going after the same type of new users versus trying to grow the pie in their own little parts of the ecosystem and bring them in, and then we can share users that way, right? So I'm very excited for, InfiniGods as one of the key builders in our ecosystem. They are going to be the mobile gaming chain. And what that means is, they published 4 titles today, right? King of Destiny has been doing really well. And I think what I'm excited for is not only will they be publishing their first party titles, right? But the chain is going to be giving them this infrastructure to onboard, all the folks that Damon, Owen, and Brian have known for many, many years now and build them on crypto to be building, third party titles in their ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So sort of looking, I mean, obviously, I guess you at the moment, you sort of, to a degree, you've done the hard part, launched a token, but of course, launching the token is sort of like that's when the hard work.
It's just the beginning, actually. I think the hard work is much ahead of us.
But as much as you can, as much as you're in control of this stuff, how you mentioned a couple of games, InfiniGods and the Parallel team, they've been announced, more to come. At the end of the year, what do you think you sort of need in terms of those sort of level of sort of partnerships and people launching games? Because I guess there is with publishing, traditional games publishing it as well, I guess there's always a balance between, to a degree, you always get more users the more games you sort of put out there, but equally your quality bar, where do you want to put the quality bar? So how do you see that for you guys this year? And obviously, games take quite a long time to build. I don't know whether the Parallel guys with their Colony game, I think that's probably still a bit of a way off. So where do you want to be at the end of the year in terms of sort of titles?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to shout out Parallel again, because Koji and Kalos have been fantastic. So they're building 3 titles actually. So Parallel TCG is partly on mainnet, partly on base, right? I think the second title that they built was Colony. I think that's in the works. And that title's on Solana. They have a third title coming out called Tau Ceti, project name Tau Ceti. I don't think the real name has been decided yet, but that is a third-person shooter, right, where you can use your Prime avatars playing the game. That one's going to be on B3 mainnet directly, right? And so that's definitely one of the titles we're super excited about. And I think if we zoom forward to the end of the year, what I'm excited about is working with just very, very high quality, like very, visionary type builders that get crypto. Because I think there are gaming studios out there. They're fantastic game builders, right? But I think they still operate from a Web2 mindset. And crypto is sometimes just like an add-on or a way to raise money, right? And, there definitely will be opportunities for those folks to grow kind of their titles. But I think the ones that will be most successful in the B3 ecosystems are the ones that can pair both, right? Like great game building and also, like belief in crypto, because we're going to help them power the tech and build the tech and the smart contracts and the marketplaces, right? But they're going to come and build amazing games. I think it's a scaling issue, like what you brought up earlier when thinking about kind of like scaling anything, right? Like you're going to have to trade off some quality. But I think we're so early right now that that's not necessarily going to be, the deciding factor for us. If I or the team see someone that just has like an amazing idea for, gosh, I don't know, like a hybrid, like MMO, open world type experience, right? Or maybe a little bit of like Minecraft plus World of Warcraft, like those types of like new ideas, we're going to back them. Or we're going to back them with everything we got. Like we're going to back them with, our marketing, our brand, our community, and then also back them with the financial support they need to bring that idea to life. That is something I am super, I'm a strong believer in. Some of those will fail, right? Just like, publishers don't have 100% hit rate, but I think the 1 or 2 that do are going to be massive hits.
Okay. Cool. Good. I don't know how relevant this is to what you're exactly doing or announced, but it's just I'm just really interested in what's going on with the sort of the AI and the AI agent stuff, and obviously that's leaked into crypto pretty heavily. So I don't know. I don't know if there's anything you're specifically doing on it, but just sort of more generally, how do you think that plays in to what you guys are doing? Anything you can mention there?
Yeah, great question. I think the AI narrative hit all of us pretty hard in crypto, like the last, gosh, I feel like it
Yeah,
came out of nowhere, right? Like all of a
yeah,
sudden in, November, December, everyone was talking about AI agents. And I think when everyone's talking about it, I always tend to feel a little cautious and a little
okay,
wary of what's going on
yeah,
because NFTs, for example, back in the day, like NFT mania, and then all of it
yeah,
corrected, right? And I think only a few are left, really building and standing today. So the way we think about AI is we want to integrate it for sure. I think it's
hmm,
definitely going to be a core part of not only game development, but
yeah,
also how like newer genres and types of gameplays will evolve. But
yeah,
we want to do it thoughtfully and
mm,
in a way that makes sense for our ecosystem. So what I mean by that is, I think, for example, we actually launched two experimental collaborations recently. One with Luna, which is one of the
mm,
more popular, AI
yeah, yeah,
agents created
mm,
by virtuals, where it's a simple platformer game that's casual, right? But you can play as Luna, like
mm,
Luna's adventure, right? And there's going to be a V2 of that game where actually the Luna model will be inside the game in some fashion, right? And Luna might be streaming the game as well, so it's kind of meta in the sense where like
yeah,
you
yeah,
get to play as Luna, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then Luna's streaming. I think that's an interesting direction of how this could go. The second is Zerebro, which is
yeah,
one of the top AI agents on Solana. That team is amazing. S tier. We are also building a game where you can play as Zerebro in Zerebro's world, right? And again, the idea there is like the inputs of the game is going to change and evolve, as Zerebro interacts and engages with the gameplay world and the gaming world around
mm,
Zerebro. So I think for me, it's like testing and thoughtfully integrating kind of like AI agents into games.
mm,
I can't, pretend to say I know where the future of this is going to go.
hmm,
We've been using it a lot to like increase like game development and production times internally, which I know a lot of other studios do as well. I also know that there's, game production platforms where, it's prompt based, right? You type in like, hey, I want to create a text based adventure, right? With, these kinds of graphics and this kind of aesthetic, and it'll produce one for you in like a matter of minutes. I think that's another interesting direction of where AI is going to go, and so yeah, I think it's a little bit early for us, but AI is definitely a critical piece of where we want to go. The crawl version of it for us is really just integrating it into existing games, right, and
yeah,
taking advantage of these AI agents and making it fun, right, to
mm,
interact and engage with them. Because right now, I think a lot of them are just chatbots, right?
yeah, yeah,
Right. And, some of them offer alpha, which is great, like AI XBT. But I think the intersection with gaming really is like being able to play as the AI agent within the games or even having them farm, right, for you,
yeah,
like what Go Gaming is doing with their AI agent launch. That's really, really cool.
mm.
And so, yeah, instead of you grinding, they're going to be grinding on your behalf. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, yeah, it's really fascinating to see how that one goes. Because you sort of end up loops within loops, sort of like who just the AIs are gaming and they're farming for you, and sort of where's the where's the input come from, or it's the AIs are spending the money to get the I think comes
Yeah,
out of you.
yeah, I know.
End
I
up in
feel like
these
if we
circles.
think about this too much, our head's gonna freaking spin out of control. But what I used to do when I played, oh gosh, I played all sorts of different games growing up. My
Mm,
favorite was Diablo 2, but obviously a
yeah,
big Pokemon fan because my profile pic on Twitter
yeah,
is a Pikachu, is the surprise Pikachu meme. But like, I used to go in deep into the forums because I like shortcuts in games.
yeah,
So I would always try to find like Easter eggs and shortcuts. And I feel like there's a version of this in the near future where like kind of the AI agent is finding shortcuts and Easter eggs for you, right?
mm,
Instead of you having to kind of manually go out and grind it yourself. And so they can almost be like your co-pilot within these
mm,
games. I know Google Gemini demonstrated something where like you're playing some 2D game, right? And then like there's a prompt on the side where like the agent's telling you what to do or how to maximally optimize your gameplay.
mm,
That kind of stuff is really cool and
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
yeah, so I'm excited for the direction of AI for sure.
Cool. Good. Coming to the end, I mean, again, another question that's sort of impossible to answer, and maybe that's the point of asking it. I mean, to go back from what we say at the beginning, you sort of launched your token. It's all gone really well. I mean, lots of tokens are going live at the moment and not doing really well. So sort of kudos for that. But now I always kind of think one of the problems of being someone who's running a company with a live token is obviously everyone just sees everything you're doing through the filter of the token. So how do you think you're going to sort of deal with that? Because obviously, it's going to go down at some point. Hopefully it won't go down below what it sort of launched at, but you're going to have volatility in that. So how do you stop that becoming a distraction for you over the next kind of few months when you're really trying to sort of build stuff and maybe stuff isn't going live because obviously it takes time to do this sort of stuff and you sort of get trapped a bit in this sort of token's the only thing that's there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're one of the core contributors on the protocol. And the reason why I mentioned that is, B3 token represents, not just what MPC Labs is doing in the ecosystem, but the broader B3 open gaming ecosystem as well. And so I think when we launch all of these game chains, right, if you're looking at B3 from a value perspective, it's really an index on the success of all of these game chains, right? And not just us. And so we're really motivated to help everyone win and everyone succeed in that sense. You're definitely right. Tokens, many times are a big distraction, not just to, I think, people building in the ecosystem, but also like the team and the company itself. And I always tell the team this, one, it's a Coinbase saying we had all the time, never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. And so like that's one. So don't let, price affect kind of your mentality and your sentiment and your ability to ship. And I think to me, the token is a byproduct of like our execution and our ability to deliver and ship, an ecosystem for everyone, who believes in us. And so, as long as we put our heads down and do our job, I think, token and price and everything else will figure itself out. So that's generally how we think about things. Of course, there's moments where, you lose sight of that a little bit when when there's, maybe some criticism, right? Or, things aren't going as well as you wish, but that's really our North Star. And we will just, we shipped a lot of things in 6 months, as you said, and we're going to continue to ship, at the high velocity rate over the next 6 months, 6 years and so on.
Cool. Lovely. I guess one of the side benefits of Base not having a token is it never had that never had that issue. But
oh yeah.
I guess that came with a whole bunch of other things as well.
Oh, you know what it came with? It came with the first question I would get on every call with gaming partners and app builders is like, when is Base launching a token? That's the first question I got. So I think, speaking of Base, it's incredible what Jesse and team have done. And I feel very fortunate to have played a early and small role in that. And I think they don't need a token, right? Like in fact, I think what they're doing is very, very smart and strategic, where by not having a token, right, it puts the spotlight liquidity wise on the partners in their ecosystem like us. And so, for them, the goal is to onboard, right, like 1 billion users. I think Jesse had a target of like 100, billion TVL or 10 billion TVL. He like shot past that earlier this year already, right? And so, for them, they are an ecosystem of builders, and they do everything in their power and everything possible to support their builders like us. And so, we're just grateful to be in the ecosystem and continuing to build with that team.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Daryl, in a very busy week.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is super fun, John.
Cool, good. And thanks to you guys for watching, listening, however you are consuming the podcast. Remember, every episode, every week actually at the moment, we're on a very high performance schedule. So every week we're putting out new episodes, some really good ones coming out. So I hope you are subscribed and you don't miss out. But we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.